Trump's chaos hits new heights. A $275 million fallout with Elon Musk, a collapsing $2.4 trillion spending bill, ICE raids sparking legal firestorms, economic warning signs flashing red, and an all-out war on Harvard. As America spirals under MAGA's authoritarian experiment, cracks in the system threaten to unleash a full-scale democratic crisis.
Good morning. It's Saturday, June 6th. Today, our nation's big, beautiful breakup. The absolutely stunning war that's developed between Trump and his one-time first buddy Elon Musk, and the nuclear fallout from that. New comments overnight from both Musk and Trump.
Then, after the administration claimed that they had no power to bring him home, Kilmar Abrego Garcia has returned to the United States after mistakenly being sent to El Salvador. But he faces some very serious criminal charges here. His lawyer joins us this morning.
Plus, how Democrats are capitalizing on the Trump chaos. We'll interview 3 Democratic attorneys general who are fighting back and winning against the Trump agenda. Welcome to the weekend. Welcome to the weekend. I'm Jonathan Capehart, along with Eugene Daniels. Jackie Alemany is on maternity leave. We begin today with the spectacular implosion of the transactional bromance between President Donald Trump and billionaire Elon Musk. That chummy Oval Office send-off last week, that's now ancient history, after Musk's attacks on President Trump's big, beautiful bill exploded into a very public online brawl that quickly got personal.
Look, Elon and I had a great relationship. I don't know if we will anymore. I'm very disappointed in Elon. I've helped Elon a lot.
So in case you missed it, Musk responded in a series of posts claiming Trump wouldn't have won the election without him. He also accused the president of, quote, ingratitude. Musk later suggested that the government was withholding details about Trump's connections with Jeffrey Epstein without providing evidence. Trump has denied any involvement in Epstein's criminal activities. That post now appears to have been deleted. Meanwhile, the president also threatened Musk's money, saying he'd cut off government contracts to Musk's companies. Musk threatened to end a SpaceX project that works with NASA. Musk later backed off that threat. But last night, he mused on his social media about starting a new political party called the America Party, while President Trump renewed his threat to Musk's contracts. I'm exhausted.
We'll take a look at everything. I look at everything. He's got a lot of money. He gets a lot of subsidy. So we'll take a look at that. Only if it's fair. Only if it's fair for him and for the country. I would certainly think about it, yeah, but it has to be fair.
President Trump also said he had no plans to speak with Musk, probably because their marriage of convenience was forged by the $275 million Musk spent on Trump's campaign, highlighting how transactional the relationship was. That was evident when President Trump held what amounted to a sales event for Tesla on the White House lawn earlier this year. And after protests of Tesla dealerships over Musk's involvement with the administration and lagging sales affected Musk's bottom line, Attorney General Pam Bondi declared vandalism of Tesla's, quote, domestic terrorism. In addition to all that, Musk tagged along on President Trump's visit to the Middle East, securing new deals for 2 of his companies during the trip. Joining us now, David Jolly, former Republican congressman and current Democratic Florida gubernatorial candidate, and Yemisi Egbawale, former chief of staff and advisor to the Biden White House press office and the founder of Podium Strategies. Thank you both very much for coming to the weekend. David, the threats to Musk's contracts
Sure.
obviously drives home the transactional nature of their relationship. But do you think Trump would actually follow through?
I do, and I think that's one of the excuse me, one of the
You're so
core
broken up about
problems.
it.
Yeah, I'm really broken up about
This
it.
breakup is really getting to
He's also been talking a lot about something we'll talk to you about later on in the show.
That's right. So Let's go to Yemisi.
Okay, Yemisi, ask this again. Do you think President Trump will follow through on his threats to Elon Musk's contract?
100%. He operates government like he operated his businesses. He expects extreme loyalty, and he's vindictive to those that he thinks poses a threat. And Elon Musk knows this. He knows who he got in bed with way back 2 years ago when he started really ramping it up on his platform X and telling everybody to vote for Donald Trump as president. This is basically Elon's platform that Trump ran on in the first place. He was the one jumping behind Trump at all of the rallies. He was the one telling spooky stories about waste, fraud, and abuse. So Trump really has to decide what he's going to do with Elon, because Elon is a huge part of his identity.
Yeah, and it's not. It just doesn't expose how transactional their relationship is. It shows how tenuous the relationship has been between MAGA and tech bros overall. The New York Times with the story: if Elon Musk and President Trump divorce, who gets Silicon Valley? The quote is, the relationship between Mr. Trump and tech industry power brokers was built on money and the promise of deregulation, with Mr. Musk in the middle of it all. Now you have this breakup happening, and it shows that the fights that they were having internally, one, we've all known about. We all know about them, but it's only going to get worse, it seems.
It does. It does, and it seems two red flags that really stick out to me, despite all the personalities. Right? If we didn't trust Musk before, we shouldn't trust him now. But the fact that Musk admitted he bought the election, right, that he paid for the presidential election, actually exposes our campaign finance system in the country as being a terrible one, right? The transactional nature that I will help you as president if you give me money and allow me to win. And then secondly, Donald Trump's executive actions to cancel contracts. That's also outside the purview of the executive office. So the kind of food fight is fun to watch, but the two big red flags around statutory and constitutional violations are pretty serious right here.
You know, Yemisi, we talk about the breakup of this bromance, the breakup of this relationship between Elon Musk and President Trump. And I'm just wondering, are we using the word relationship? Does it even count as a relationship? If it's this transactional, is it a relationship?
Hey, if you date for 4 months, it counts. It's a relationship.
Oh,
It is DC. Dating in DC is hard, honey.
That's right.
I bring this up because Trump posted somewhere Elon, quote, went crazy after, quote, he took away his EV mandate. And he said Elon was wearing thin. This is the president. I asked him to leave. I took away his EV mandate that forced everyone to buy electric cars that nobody else wanted, that he knew for months I was going to do. And he just went crazy. All caps. Now you were saying, go on, finish your thought. I just had to put that out there. More on DC dating.
Just to add really quick, we can't forget that when Donald Trump talked about EV mandates and not having them, Elon Musk was standing right beside him. So I think the thing that's really interesting is you have both Trump and Republicans saying that's his big beef. That's not his big beef. His big beef is the other stuff. But go ahead, we will let you talk. We will let you talk on the show.
If he didn't believe in EV mandates, I don't know why he didn't have maybe a Hummer on the South Lawn instead of a fleet of Teslas. Is the Tesla still going to stay right outside of the West Wing? I'm interested to know what happens to that.
There's been reports that he might be looking to sell it. We have not, NBC has not confirmed it ourselves.
Well, I don't know. Do you give your ex back their stuff or do you keep it? A gift is a gift.
The girls do it differently. I keep it and burn it.
Not in this economy.
No, you're correct.
Well, David, I mean, we're sitting here, we're having a really good time at both their expense. But, I mean, what does it say when you have the world's richest person, everyone keeps saying man, but the world's richest person up against the world's most powerful person by virtue of the fact that he was elected by the people of the United States?
Yeah, look, I don't think we have to attack wealth to recognize that unlimited wealth and power actually creates real danger for our democracy, because you get to see this personal, transactional nature of how our government is run, how our economy, we pick winners and losers based on a a financial relationship, and everybody else is getting left behind. And this, look, ultimately, this is today's Republican Party. I mean, Donald Trump arose as a transactional candidate, former Democrat looking for a party to run, walked through the open doors, and the Republican Party said, okay, come on in. And so it was always heading in this direction. And I think in a second term where Donald Trump has learned I can escape accountability, there's a latency to how Congress works and the courts work. I'm going to do what I want as president, and that includes giving Elon Musk what he wants. He's going to give me what I want. I'm going to take him around the world, secure him contracts. It's a grift, it's a graft, it's gross, it's disgusting. It highlights so much that's wrong, both with our campaign finance system, with our ethics system, and the inability to hold a president accountable in this modern environment.
Yeah, one of the things that always happens with Donald Trump's relationships, it seems, most of them, is that once there's a disagreement, he either doesn't know the person or he has other things to say about them. He said Rex Tillerson, his Secretary of State, a man who is, quote, dumb as a rock. Secretary of Defense James Mattis. Mattis was our country's most overrated general. When you give a crazed, crying lowlife a break, referring to Omarosa Manigault Newman. So this is how it works with Donald Trump. If you run afoul of him, if the loyalty that you're giving him, you expect a little bit back, right? Or you at least at the very least, for some of these folks like the Secretary of Defense and State, are probably giving him advice that he's not interested in. This is what we've seen over and over again with how Donald Trump operates with folks.
But I think what's concerning about Musk is, right, the people who worked in the roles of Secretary of Defense, Secretary of State, they have some decorum and understanding of the job. So when they leave, we're not spilling national security secrets here. Elon Musk sat in cabinet level meetings. We don't know what meetings he even took in his office that was within the West Wing. And right now he's spilling all of it on X, his own platform. So I think there's a huge concern here. American working families should be concerned about market instability. Your 401k could be at risk because two billionaires are having an argument on X right now. That's concerning.
That's an excellent point. Also, what you were just saying made me think of the Supreme Court saying that the Doge fellas can have access to the Social Security information in order for them to do their jobs. I mean, it was already, David, concerning that you had these people have access to our most sensitive information.
That's right.
People who were working for someone who wasn't even not only not elected by the American people, but also in a position that wasn't Senate confirmed, completely unaccountable to the American people.
Donald Trump and Elon Musk continue to make us less safe. It is true in empowering our enemies and abandoning our allies on the world stage. It is true in the area of public health. It is true in the attack on science and meteorology and the ability to plan for storms. And it is true in terms of our own personal data and our personal security because what he's unleashed in Doge. But that crisis is only a crisis because the Capitol, the Congress, has collapsed. If the Congress could actually provide oversight and would step into this gap and say, we are not going to let you do that, we are going to reclaim our jurisdiction and actually legislate and provide oversight, then the crisis wouldn't be a constitutional crisis. The constitutional crisis is not just the malfeasance of the president, it's that the Congress has collapsed and is letting him do this.
And that's what the question I was going to ask before Yemisi gave me the idea to talk about the Supreme Court was the fact that Speaker Johnson and the Republican majorities in the House and the Senate, they are as complicit in this whole thing as anybody else.
Well, maybe not complicit, but maybe they're on board. That's the other thing, right? Like it's not just being complicit and letting it happen. It's like
that's actually the right word. They are on board, right? True believers.
We got to sneak in a quick break here, but Yemisi and David Jolly are sticking around later this hour, calling all Florida voters. David Jolly launched his bid to be your governor this week. And he's here to answer your question. Some of ours, but some of yours. Follow the prompt on your screen where you can submit questions at the Weekend MSNBC on Blue Sky and Instagram. And coming up, even without the Musk of it all, Senate Republicans were already struggling to stomach the price tag of Trump's big, beautiful bill. Could this crush the GOP dream of getting the bill passed by Independence Day? You're watching The Weekend.
Trump's $2.4 trillion spending bill faces fierce GOP resistance, worsened by Elon Musk's vocal opposition. The bill slashes Medicare and Medicaid, threatening healthcare for millions. House Republicans fear Musk's threats to fund primary challengers, while Democrats see an opportunity to exploit GOP divisions and highlight harmful cuts to working families. As Senate Republicans wobble, David Jolly reemerges, launching a bold bid to flip Florida blue against MAGA dominance.
President Trump's big old bill is facing some serious resistance from Republicans. And that's even without the cover of his new frenemy Elon Musk's opposition, especially after it was revealed the bill would add $2.4 trillion to the national debt over the next 2 years. That was with a T, not a B or an M. That's according to an estimate from the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office. And nearly 11 million people will lose their health insurance by 2034 under the bill due to spending cuts and Medicaid eligibility rules. Now, Trump told members of the Senate Finance Committee to just, quote, pass the damn bill during a White House meeting this week. To add even more fuel to the fire, Elon Musk has already threatened to primary any politician who votes for the bill. David Jolly and Wale are with us. I put you guys together. That's what
That's right. That's right.
Do. You know, David, you have been in there, right?
Sure.
You worked under two speakers of the House, if I remember correctly.
That's right.
They're going to do something here, right? Talk about House bills the Senate is where the House bills go to die. That has happened over and over and over again.
That's right.
So what do you think is happening? What do you think, Thune is kind of concocting over there?
So winning is unifying, and I suspect they'll find a way to unify. My experience, you know what I love about being a Democrat now? we get to accept math and science and data. Republican math never works. Republican math never works. It was my lived experience in Congress. I would co-sponsor tax bills and actually vote against them because at the end of the day on the floor, the math never worked. They just they make it go away a little bit. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I think we're also seeing what we already know, which is the Republican Party is not a party of fiscal responsibility. It simply is not. I mean, the Republican Party here is prepared to blow up the debt and deficit. And then on the question of values, how are they looking to cut money out of Medicaid? And look, generationally, I think a lot of people of a certain age think of Medicaid as, oh, that was only for certain socioeconomic communities. Mm-hmm. Now, in many states like Florida, over 40% of childbirth care is provided by Medicaid. Long-term care facilities, if you have a family member with dementia or in some type of long-term care facility, what happens is when you run out of resources, Medicaid starts picking up the tab. And the special needs community, unique abilities community, largely supported by Medicaid. And Republicans can say it's not going to cut that, but that's not true. That's absolutely not true, and particularly in long-term care facilities, they're apparently going to revoke a rule about the number of staff that's required in some of those facilities. So I think we're seeing the perfect display of Republican values. We're going to explode the debt and deficit. We're going to use math that doesn't work, and we're going to take away health care from people who need it. Look, go ahead and do it. It's wrong, but you're going to be in a lot of trouble next November if you do it.
David, let me stick with you because I just wonder if you think that Musk coming out so vociferously against the quote big beautiful bill that'll have any impact on its passage in the Senate. Short question: Who are congressional Republicans more afraid of, President Trump or Elon Musk?
I think House Republicans are more afraid of Elon Musk. I'm not sure Senate Republicans are as much. I mean, for whatever reason, right? Senators are just different. They all think they're president of the United States. They don't take threats pretty well. But House members are terrified. And if if there's a primary threat by Elon Musk, look, let's be honest, most seats, right? 90% of our seats are either gerrymandered or naturally gerrymandered for one party. So if you're a Republican and Elon Musk is going to drop $5 million into a primary against you, you'll lose. You'll lose. Donald Trump, you can navigate Trumpism a little bit, but the Elon Musk threat is real.
Mm-hmm. There seems to be an opportunity for Democrats here, right? You have Musk running around, this man with a humongous microphone, one that rivals Donald Trump. He has X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, where a lot of Americans pay attention to and are getting a lot of news, quote unquote, from. He called it an abomination, this bill. Is that an opportunity for Democrats to be like, yeah, it is an abomination. We disagree about why, but here's why we think it's an abomination, right? Does it give more attention to something that the Democrats were already trying to do?
Yeah, and they should speak out as loud about it as Senators Rand Paul, Johnson, Hawley. I mean, Republican senators are being vocal about the fact that they are cautious and hesitant about the bill. And I think that Democrats should pick up where a lot of the Republican senators are leaving off and say yes. And on top of that, Senator Lisa Murkowski should care about the fact that those energy tax credits greatly benefit Alaska, and that cutting rural health care will damage Alaska. And yes, I agree with Senator Josh Hawley that it is Medicaid cuts, and we shouldn't be doing this to working class folks. And for once in my life, I agree with Senator Rand Paul, and let's look at the budget. There are so many. Senator Mike Lee talking about limited government. I mean, now is the time to put the pressure on them. Like you said, David, senators are just not as concerned about threats coming from a president because they've got a lot longer of time to deal with sitting in that seat. I'm a former Senate staffer myself, and so, yeah, I think the upper chamber has the upper hand.
Senators don't like to be pushed around.
They hate
House members get pushed around every single day of their lives. Senators don't.
Okay, senators don't like being pushed around, and I'm doing that because I'm looking here because we have a breakdown of who the Republicans who are against the bill, and under our heading here, concerned about Medicaid cuts, clean energy tax credit, but Medicaid cuts. Senator Susan Collins of Maine, she's always concerned. She's concerned about this, she's concerned about that, but at the end of the day, more often than not, she votes for the thing.
She never misses the opportunity to do the wrong thing. Look, so senators don't like, don't like to look like they are being pushed around, and some of them reach for political cover and language to try to make it look like that. I'm more curious about those who have drawn a red line on the debt and the deficit and the numbers. Does a Rand Paul ever move on this? Does a real fiscal hawk ever move on this? I don't know.
We have run out of time, and we are just getting started this conversation. Yemisi Egbawale, thank you very much for coming to the weekend.
Thank you for having me.
And still ahead, we can't let David Jolly go without asking him about his bid for governor of Florida. He'll be answering some of your questions after the break.
Ex-GOP Representative David Jolly launches his Democratic run for Florida governor, targeting property taxes, insurance crises, and MAGA's culture wars. He emphasizes coalition building across Democrats, independents, and moderate Republicans. With rising grassroots support, Jolly believes defeating Trump-aligned candidates in Florida could reshape national politics and deliver Democrats major momentum. As Florida heats up politically, Trump's immigration crackdowns intensify, triggering legal chaos in the controversial case of Abrigo Garcia.
That was former Florida Republican Congressman David Jolly announcing his bid for governor of Florida, running this time as a Democrat. Jolly faces a tough road ahead. Florida has become a solidly red state over the past few election cycles, with 2 straight decades of Republican governorship. Jolly left the Republican Party 7 years ago, largely because of his opposition to President Trump. And now he says he's ready to rid Floridians of, quote, the home for the rich and the reckless under Ron DeSantis. David Jolly is back with us.
My voice is not.
No, your voice has got better over time.
That's right. That's right.
So, David, the basic question is, one, why are you running for governor? And why did you switch parties? Why did you join the Democratic Party to do it?
So I have been a lifelong Floridian. I've been in Florida politics for 30 years. Democrats can win next November in Florida. I believe that. We are in the middle of a generational change election at a time in Florida where we have a property insurance and property tax crisis that we haven't seen in 30 years. So you take the macro environment and you run on Democratic values just to address people's problems, not on Donald Trump, not on MAGA, and you end up in an environment where Andy Beshear wins in Kentucky, Steve Bullock wins in Montana. That's how this race is setting up. Now look, my journey is part of my story. My journey from a Republican to 6 years as an independent to a Democrat is part of the strength of this campaign. Here's how I describe it. I don't think my values have ever changed. When I was a Republican on the Hill, I supported marriage equality, climate science, gun control, campaign finance reform. I was fighting my own party on those values. But my positions have. They've hardened, they've grown, and I think that's actually a strength. I think a lot of voters' politics have changed, and I'm happy to have that conversation. But why a Democrat? I look at today's Democratic Party and I see 3 fundamental values. We fight for an economy that works for all people, a government that actually serves its people, our seniors, our veterans, investing in public education, and a party that lifts everyone up regardless of where you were born, the color of your skin, who you love, who you worship. Those are the values. And I think if there's a national opportunity for Democrats to see a resurgence this cycle, we have to start with our values, those core values, and then you apply them to the issues that are facing voters this cycle, not last cycle, this cycle, and we can win.
One of the things that's interesting about Florida is that, you know, we're all old enough to remember when it was like a purple state. Right?
Sure,
like,
sure,
when it was like a back and forth. Biden or Obama won it.
That's right.
You were in Congress then.
You were
I
in
was.
Congress.
I was.
That is different. It is a very red state, right?
It is.
You talk to folks there, it's very red. One of the things when I talk to Florida Democrats and people that work in the space
Sure.
is they say the party has just like thrown up their hands essentially in Florida. That it's kind of just like,
Sure.
well, on
Sure.
the idea of winning governor, they've moved on. I texted one of those Democrats yesterday to see what, you know, how the people were
Sure.
taking it all in. It's long. I won't read it all.
All right.
Yeah, it was real long. But the larger thing was it will take a Herculean effort. But David Jolly is no Charlie Crist, who lost by more than 20 points to DeSantis in 2022. I think a lot of the conditions are falling into place where he could actually win next year, especially if Trump continues melting down, his words, and Jolly runs a coalition-based campaign effort that every day hammers the Republican legislators and DeSantis and Byron Donalds, who's running on the Republican side, over their creation of this affordability crisis. One of the things that happens a lot in states when people are running for governors, they get pulled into the national conversation.
That's right.
How are you going to stay focused on what's happening in your state?
This
Because
race,
it's hard, it seems.
This race is not about Donald Trump. This race is about an affordability crisis, property insurance, safe communities, property taxes. If I'm talking about that and Byron Donalds or Casey DeSantis are talking about Donald Trump, we're going to win. People want solutions. Now, here's the important thing. As I mentioned earlier, we get to accept math. The numbers are really hard for Democrats. So a candidate has to unify a coalition. We have to turn out Democratic candidates, inspire Democratic candidates who want change. We're already seeing that at town halls, right? Turnout is really up. But we have to build a coalition that includes independents and Republicans, not diluting Democratic values, amplifying Democratic values, sitting with the faith community, talking about our values, going to gun owners and say, you're not the problem, but our laws are. And if we protect kids, we're going to save your kids just like we're going to save ours. We do have to go into South Florida and say, we think capitalism is right for our opportunity, but we're the party that's going to fight for fair capitalism. So we have to go places we haven't been. We have to build coalitions that haven't existed before.
David, we have, well, we only have time. We've got audience questions.
All right.
We only have time, hopefully
send them
for
to our
two.
website.
So, David, here's a question. This just says, Orlando native here. Mr. Jolly, what took you so long? We've been waiting for you to fix our incredible state.
That's very kind. Listen, politics is about timing and the moment meeting you halfway. But I say this very importantly. This is a lived experience for my wife and I. We have a 6-year-old and 4-year-old. As I shared, it's the perfect time. They're out of diapers, but not on social media. but here's how we win. I appreciate the support and the compliments. Jolly, go get them. We win through a coalition. The candidate's just one person. We need 4 or 5 million Floridians to come around and say, now's the moment for change. Now's the moment for change. We have gone in the direction of culture wars that have divided us. We've gone in the direction of Republican policies in Tallahassee that have handed us an affordability crisis. We're not sure if Florida is the home that it can be, but we are going to demand change. I'm just one person in that coalition. This coalition is ready to win. And listen, when we win next November, we beat MAGA in its home state. We change national politics. The road to the White House goes through Florida, and we have demonstrated how Democrats can really win. Look, whether I was a candidate or not, I will tell you, I think the resurgence for Democrats goes through state capitals next year. Florida, Michigan, Texas, California, where Democrats do not talk about Donald Trump, right? We have to fight that issue here in D.C. Gubernatorial candidates provide for safe communities, good education, a good economy. We focus on our values. Let Republicans do what they want to do.
David, thank you. You have quite the hill to climb here. So
we'll get
thank
there.
you for joining us.
Yeah, you'll be back.
You'll be back.
With the voice.
The voice will also be back. Still ahead, Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back on U.S. soil after being wrongfully sent to El Salvador. Now he is set to face criminal charges of transporting undocumented migrants here. We'll break down this stunning move by the Trump administration next. You're watching The Weekend.
Abrego Garcia, deported illegally under Trump, is returned but faces federal smuggling charges. Lawyers call it a political cover-up violating due process. Protesters decry ICE raids nationwide, exposing broader abuses in Trump's immigration system. Legal experts warn this retroactive prosecution undermines constitutional protections for undocumented immigrants facing deportation threats. While immigrant rights face erosion, Tulsa survivors finally see long overdue justice through the city's unprecedented $105 million Road to Repair initiative.
Last night, protests erupted in downtown Los Angeles after immigration authorities raided 3 locations across the city on Friday. Hundreds took to the streets outside an ICE facility to protest the raids and demand the release of SEIU California President David Huerta, who was detained while documenting the arrests. This follows an update to another major immigration case. Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland father who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador by the Trump administration earlier this year, has been returned to the United States. But the Justice Department isn't presenting it as a correction for what multiple courts, including the Supreme Court, have ruled was an illegal removal. Instead, he's back in the country to face human smuggling charges in Tennessee. According to the newly unsealed indictment, prosecutors allege that over the last 9 years, Abrego Garcia and others conspired to transport undocumented migrants, including alleged MS-13 members, from Central America through Mexico and across the Texas border into the U.S. The Trump administration appeared to face no obstacles in returning Abrego Garcia to the United States, despite previously insisting that only El Salvador's president, Bukele, could authorize his return and that Bukele had refused. And yet, he's here. Yesterday, Abrego Garcia's attorney called this prosecution a clear abuse of power, saying, quote, after months of delay and secrecy, they're bringing him back not to correct their error, but to prosecute him. This shows they were playing games with the court all along. Due process means the chance to defend yourself before you're punished, not after. Joining us now is another member of the legal team representing Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Benjamin Ozario, who's an immigration attorney with Murray Ozario PLLC. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I guess my first question to you is, have you talked to Abrego Garcia, and what has he told you about these charges that are against him? Does he say he's innocent?
First of all, thank you very much for having me. Simon, who you just quoted, will be traveling to see Mr. Abrego Garcia this weekend. So that's going to be the first opportunity we've had to speak with him. Regarding the criminal charges, for the time being, he's been appointed a federal public defender. He was arraigned yesterday, and I imagine that attorney has spoken with him about sort of the nature of his criminal charges. But we have not yet had an opportunity to speak with him, and we hope to accomplish that this weekend.
Well, Mr. Ozario, just weeks ago, the Trump administration said it was out of their control to return Mr. Abrego Garcia to the United States, and only El Salvador's president could make that call. Now they're saying an arrest warrant was all it took. What do you make of this timing?
I mean, the timing is extremely suspicious, and also the nature of the charges themselves. If you look at the indictment, there's a number of different allegations, but conduct that's not charged. They charge him, or they allege that he's a gang member. They don't charge him with gang participation, even though there's a gang participation statute. You know, they allege that he was trafficking in firearms. They don't charge him with that. So I think this is all an attempt to muddy him up. And then on top of that, I think this is an attempt to cover up what they are doing, which is really complying with the court order here and trying to say, no, we're doing this as a result of an extradition. But no, you're doing this to cover the fact that you needed to facilitate his return.
Mr. Ozario, he is facing, I think it said 10 years per migrant that he allegedly hoped to get into the country, which would amount to a life sentence. In your experience, is that the normal punishment that someone like Abrego Garcia would face in these kind of cases?
So again, I'm an immigration lawyer. That's not really my specialty. I will say, having reviewed the criminal documents regarding the individual who owned the vehicle, who is currently serving time on reentry, he got, I believe, 3 to 5 years on all of the conspiracy, human trafficking charges that are related, I guess, to the charges that they're trying to bring against Mr. Abrego Garcia. So you would not typically see that sort of sentence for somebody with zero criminal history.
A federal prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District in Tennessee resigned a few weeks ago as the office began its case against Mr. Abrego Garcia. What does this suggest to you about the strength of the government's case against your client?
Well, it's odd if they believe that there was a very strong case that they didn't bring it in 2022. It's also odd that the timing relates exactly to when they were ordered to bring him back. So I can understand that the prosecutor who resigned may have felt that this was only being done for political reasons and not really in the interest of justice here.
Mr. Rosario, the Senator Van Hollen released a statement on Abrego Garcia. Obviously, he went to El Salvador, met with your client. Said for months the Trump administration flouted the Supreme Court and our Constitution. As I have repeatedly said, this is not about the man, it's about his constitutional rights and the rights of all. The administration will now have to make its case in the court of law as it should have all along. This seemingly is exactly what a lot of people were asking for, which is due process. It's happening after the fact, but this is how it should have worked from the beginning, right? There was an accusation to Mr. Abrego Garcia. He got lawyers. You guys all went in court and hashed it out there. This is, but it's working. But we're working backwards here quite a bit.
Well, I mean, the good thing is, we ended up sort of avoiding a constitutional crisis here, and we are getting due process for him. We were never fighting for the character of this man. We were only fighting for him to get the process that he deserved and for the rule of law to be enforced here. This is the man who had an order that was supposed to protect him from going to El Salvador, and the government admitted it committed an error when it sent him to El Salvador. So we were just asking the government to correct that error. If they want to charge him with criminal charges, that is well within their right. I hope he gets the due process in these criminal proceedings that he did not get in the immigration proceedings that just occurred to him. The executor cannot break the law and then say, whoopsie. I mean, it's just very offensive to our constitutional order.
And due process is the big issue in this case. Mr. Rosario, let me have you listen to comments that President Trump made about your client yesterday. Watch this.
He should have never had to be returned. I could see it either way, bringing it back or not bringing it back. But by bringing it back, you show how bad he is. He's a bad guy.
Your reaction to those very strong characterizations of your client?
So when bad guys get due process, I mean, that's just the way it is. If you or I go out and commit a heinous crime, we get due process. If we're alleged to have committed something that we did not do, we get due process. Again, it's not the type of crime or the serious nature of the crime that matters. Everybody gets due process. If you're charged with speeding and you want to contest it, you get due process. If you're charged with murder and you want to contest it, you get due process here. So, it's very unfair for the executive branch, who's supposed to faithfully enforce our laws, to say that we don't have to follow the law.
Mr. Rosario, before we let you go, really quickly, it is now proven that this administration is able to bring people back from El Salvador. Does this, in your mind, you're an immigration attorney, does this open up the possibility that more folks will have to be brought back now that they've proven that they're able to do so?
Well, I think that's probably one reason they did this under the guise of extradition, right? If you do it under extradition, you say, well, we're not doing it as part of bringing this person back because of a court order regarding their immigration proceedings. We're doing it back to charge them with a crime. And so then they could use that to justify in the future, well, these people haven't been charged with a crime here in the United States, so we can't bring them back. But I do think it demonstrates, and there are other cases that are ongoing right now in federal district courts where they're being ordered to facilitate other individuals' return. So I do think you will see more of them. Judge Boasberg has just said that some of the Venezuelans can contest whether they are alleged gang members. I really hope that happens for, in particular, Andre. So I do think that you will start to see a wave of these individuals being able to contest their removal from the United States.
Benjamin Rosario, thank you very much for coming to the...
Abrego Garcia, deported illegally under Trump, is returned but faces federal smuggling charges. Lawyers call it a political cover-up violating due process. Protesters decry ICE raids nationwide, exposing broader abuses in Trump's immigration system. Legal experts warn this retroactive prosecution undermines constitutional protections for undocumented immigrants facing deportation threats. While immigrant rights face erosion, Tulsa survivors finally see long overdue justice through the city's unprecedented $105 million Road to Repair initiative.
I was so scared. I didn't think we could make it out alive. I remember people were running everywhere.
We lost everything that day, our homes, our churches, our newspapers, our theaters, our lives. Greenwood represented all the best of what was possible for black people in America and for all the people. no one cared about us for almost 100 years.
That was Tulsa survivors Leslie Benningfield Randall and Viola Fletcher testifying to Congress back in 2021 to demand reparations for the damage done during the Tulsa race massacre. The massacre was one of the most horrific incidents of racial violence in U.S. history, and it's taken more than 100 years later. It's more than 100 years later for reparations to finally come. The city's first black mayor, Monroe Nichols, announced a new project called Road to Repair, where he initiated the Greenwood Trust to secure $105 million by June 2026. He called the massacre, quote, a stain on his city's history, and with this initiative, he intends to chip away at the disparities it caused. I just want to point out, we've used the word reparations many times to talk about this, and the mayor has been clear that this isn't about reparations. No one's getting a direct check from the government, but this $105 million pot will be divvied up in various programs and plans for the city: housing fund, cultural preservation, land acquisition.
Because reparations isn't just about people getting checks. It's about like what was the harm, and how do you make up for the 100+ years of what could have been, right? I was in Tulsa for the 100th anniversary when Joe Biden went, and as I was walking around the community, I met some of these folks. It is a testament to them and that community. Is a testament to those survivors that they kept this fight going on, right? This didn't happen. The mayor absolutely had a hand in it, but I think folks should remember this was about regular people standing up and saying what they wanted. And in this moment, that feels important.
Right. It's always ordinary people doing extraordinary things to help their communities. And also, you know, what's happened in Tulsa since Greenwood, like a huge highway has divided up the black community there in Tulsa. But it's not just, I mean, we're talking about Tulsa and what the mayor is doing there. But, you know, I just want to play. Do we have that sound of, this is Congresswoman Summer Lee pop quizzing the Secretary of Education on Tulsa and Ruby Bridges. Watch this.
Would you say that it would be an illegal DEI for a lesson plan on the Tulsa race massacre?
I'd have to get back to you on that.
Do you know what the Tulsa race massacre is?
I'd like to look into it more and get back to you on it.
She'd like to look more into
I'm sorry, she would like to look more into...
And then get back to you. Secretary of Education. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I am speechless. But you know what? You know what?
She also asked about Ruby Bridges.
Well, right, and she was like, I'll have to look into it. Specific question, but whatevs. Whatevs, Gene.
And that's it. That's it. We're just getting started this weekend. Obviously, coming up at the top of the hour, flooding the zone. Former Democratic Senator Jon Tester on how his party will keep its messaging laser focused even as Trump governs by chaos. You're watching The Weekend.
Tulsa launches its $105 million Road to Repair Fund to address long-standing racial disparities from the 1921 race massacre. Survivors, community leaders, and the mayor push non-cash reparations through housing, cultural preservation, and economic programs. Advocates emphasize grassroots activism drove this breakthrough after decades of silence, injustice, and systemic neglect. As Tulsa confronts history, Trump floods headlines with bans and conspiracies, deploying chaos to distract from fiscal and legal failures.
Welcome back to The Weekend. I'm Eugene Daniels here with Jonathan Capehart. Coming up this hour, President Trump's flurry of executive actions, from a new travel ban to a renewed attack on President Biden. Are they all just a big distraction from the fact Trump's agenda is in big old trouble? Former Montana Senator Jon Tester is standing by to weigh in. That coffee's gonna work with my sister at some point. And later, 3 of the Democratic attorneys general taking on Trump and winning. They'll join us live to talk about their strategy and what they're focusing on next. But we begin with President Trump and the art of flooding the zone. This week alone, he signed a proclamation issuing a travel ban on 12 countries and partial restrictions on 7 others. Trump also barred foreign students from entering the U.S. on Harvard visas, but that order has been temporarily blocked by a federal judge. And he ordered the DOJ to look into whether President Biden used an autopen to sign documents while in office. Reminder that presidents don't typically tell the DOJ to do anything. Trump has accused Biden aides of using autopen signatures to cover up his, quote, cognitive decline. Biden calls the allegations ridiculous and false. To be clear, Trump is not blindly throwing everything but the kitchen sink at us. It's also likely part of a larger strategy, perhaps to distract us from the fact that the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office projected that Trump's spending bill will add $2.4 trillion with a T to the national debt over the next 10 years. But this should come as no surprise, that feeling that you have every day of, oh my God, what the hell is happening? How do I keep up with all of this news? You may remember former Trump White House chief strategist Steve Bannon said that this was the plan all along.
I said, all we have to do is flood the zone. Every day we hit them with three things. They'll bite on one and we'll get all of our stuff done. Bang, bang, bang. These guys will never be able to recover.
Joining us now, former Senator John Tester of Montana. He's also an MSNBC political analyst. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. I want to start there with the, Republicans and their flooding the zone, Trump acolytes flooding the zone. The original travel ban, right? It caused all of this chaos, and there was all these protests that happened. And the effect of flooding the zone is also that people get used to things. This new travel ban happened, and there wasn't much protest in the street. Not much happened. So are folks just not shocked anymore as these things happen? And is that also part of the plan?
Well, I think it is. I think ultimately the bigger part of the plan is lack of accountability. If you flood the zone, that means people can't pay attention, and there's no accountability to the actions that are going on there. And I think that becomes a huge problem. And that accountability not only comes from the press, but it also comes from the constituents. And since there's so much stuff hitting the street, you just don't know which way to turn. And so a lot of Bannon is right. A lot of the stuff gets through. When in fact, if there was some time to sit and analyze what's going on, you would know it's not good for working families and businesses and the country as a whole.
Mm-hmm. But Senator, what you say is right. It's not good for the country. It's not good for their constituents. And yet, when you look at the polls, the president's approval rating is ticking up, particularly among Republicans. It seems as though what he's doing is kind of popular. So how do you push back on that? And also, I just want to make this one caveat. The president doesn't care about his overall job approval rating. What he cares about is his approval rating among Republicans. And his approval rating among Republicans is pretty solid.
Yeah, look, he's implementing the 2025 plan chapter and verse. And I think that it takes time for policies to become reality on the ground. I mean, the tariffs are a prime example. We haven't seen the true impacts of the tariffs and probably won't for another couple months. But when they happen, it's going to take a long time to roll the clock back on this stuff. And so when people start seeing how the policies are really flawed and start feeling it in their pocketbooks, then I think you'll see that level of support drop. And it just, nothing happens overnight. It takes time. And now the key is that some of the people that feel this pain, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of deflection and say, well, this wasn't because of tariffs, or this wasn't because they hollowed out the government, or whatever the excuse might be. But the truth is you need to continue to look and say, hey, was this the way it was a year ago or 2 years ago, or and why is it this way today? But no, I think the reason you're seeing support the way it is because people haven't felt the impacts of some of these flawed policies.
Senator, one of the things that this provides is Democrats an opportunity. I want to play you something from your former colleague, Senator Chris Murphy. He was talking to our colleague Jen Psaki on Wednesday.
The actual agenda is to steal from regular Americans in order to pad the pockets of the rich. So what does this bill do? It actually costs money for 40% of the American public. You get poorer if you are in the bottom 40%, and the richest families get a tax cut of $270,000. Okay, nobody wants that. That's super unpopular. So how do you get that done? You distract people by making them think that they're at war with other Americans, making them think that they have something to fear from people who look different from them or speak a different language.
Now, he's making a lot of the same points you were just making. And I think the thing that's really interesting is that within the party, and you know this better than I do, there's been this kind of tussle about we need to talk like regular people talked. And I feel like, even though he was laying out very clearly, like the policy issues that he has with the bill and the other issues that he has with the bill, it was also talking like regular folks talk. And I'm curious what you think about that kind of strategy and how much the party needs to adopt it.
Well, yeah, it's absolutely essential. I mean, I think that if you can't talk to people in a way that they can relate with what you're saying, you're not speaking to anybody. And Chris Murphy is absolutely correct. I think when you take a look at the increase in national debt because of this big, beautiful bill, and the fact that that increase in the debt is happening because they're giving uber tax breaks to the ultra rich, it just doesn't pass the smell test, Eugene. And so he is absolutely right. But the fact is you've got to talk to people in a way that they can understand that. I think Murphy does a pretty good job in that, and I think he's spot on with those comments about the big beautiful bill and how it affects regular people, working families, small businesses, and the benefits it gives to an elite few through the tax bill.
Senator, you were a former senator. You know the folks there on the Hill, the Republicans in particular, who are going to have to vote for the so-called big, beautiful bill. There are lots of people, lots of Republican senators who are expressing concern of various aspects of this bill. At the end of the day, do you expect those Republicans expressing concern to fall in line and ultimately vote for this bill?
Before the Musk-Trump blow-up over the last few days, I would have said absolutely, this thing is greased, it's going to go through. I think that blow-up has changed the equation. And I think it has the potential of giving some of the folks that know better about this bill the backbone to vote no on it. We'll see what happens, Jonathan. I think if you take a look at this bill, the list is long with what's wrong with it. I mean, truthfully, we could be talking about everything from not only the tax code, but Job Corps and PBS and NPR, and the list is very, very long. TRIO program gets slashed, and so there will be accountability. And if the people in the Senate take a look at this, modify it, make it better, they may have some ability to escape the accountability. But this is not a good bill. It could drive our country into a recession, quite frankly.
Yeah, and if the Senate messes with the bill, it has to go to the House, and all bets are off then. Former Senator John Tester is staying with us through the break.
Trump unleashes executive orders, new travel bans, Harvard visa blocks, DOJ autopen probes, and attacks on Biden's cognition. Analysts expose this flood the zone tactic, overwhelming public attention to dodge accountability for $2.4 trillion debt. Democrats warn unchecked chaos erodes democratic norms, while MAGA supporters remain loyal despite escalating legal controversies. Amid policy chaos, warning signs emerge as job reports wobble and Trump's escalating tariffs quietly devastate American manufacturers and families.
At first glance, the job market seems to be showing some resilience during a time of economic uncertainty. The United States added 139,000 jobs in the month of May, slightly better than expectations, and the unemployment rate held steady at 4.2%. Sounds like good news, right? Well, there's a little more to it than that. The Labor Department revised unemployment numbers from March and April down 95,000 fewer jobs than previously reported. We'll have to wait and see if the numbers from May hold up. Meanwhile, concerns over Trump's tariffs aren't going away anytime soon. On Wednesday, tariffs on steel and aluminum imports doubled to 50%. Economists are warning this could raise prices on cars, houses, canned goods, and other groceries. This week, Trump's Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, got a timely reminder of the impact tariffs have on consumers.
What's the tariff on bananas? Americans, by the way, love bananas. We buy billions of them a year. I love bananas. What's the tariff on bananas?
Generally 10%.
Correct, 10%. Walmart has already increased the cost of bananas by 8%.
But as countries do deals with us, that will go to zero. There's no uncertainty if you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't
so
produce
the concept
bananas in
of
America.
building in America and paying no tariff is very, very clear.
We cannot
Fighting for
build
imports
bananas
is
in
not the
America.
We can point out that bananas are grown in some areas of the United States, but not nearly enough to meet the demand. So Lutnick's answer is still BANANAS. John Tetzer is back with us, and joining the conversation is Axios senior economics reporter Courtney Brown. So, Courtney, welcome to the table. You co-authored a piece in Axios titled "The Look Under the Hood Jobs Report." Explain what you see when you look under the hood.
Can I tell you the metaphor I actually wanted to use?
Yeah.
So, you know, when you clean your apartment, you've got relatives coming over, you clean, you shove everything in that closet.
Correct.
Everything's fine as long as you don't open that closet.
Right.
That is this jobs report. The headline number, 130,000 jobs. That's great. Unemployment rate held at 4.2%. That's great, historically low, but then you dig into the report and you see some worrying signs. The downward revisions you mentioned, 100,000 jobs nearly just shaved off from March and April. Also, 625,000 people exited the labor force.
Oh, that's bad.
That's not great.
Right.
I know this sounds wonky, but it's very important that we have workers coming off the sidelines to meet the demand that employers might have. So the fact that we had such a huge surge of people exiting the workforce says something about what's out there right now, how confident they feel about their ability to get jobs.
And on the job revisions downward for March and April, should also point out that the January numbers were revised down by 14,000 jobs, and the February numbers were revised down by 34,000 jobs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it continues to happen. Senator Tester, you know, one of the things that we have heard over and over from this White House is that everyone's clamoring to get deals, tariff deals with them. And I want to play you Senator Kennedy grilling Howard Lutnick about the end goal of the tariffs.
If Vietnam, for example, came to you tomorrow and said, okay, Mr. Secretary, you win. We're going to remove all tariffs and all trade barriers. Would the United States please do the same? Would you accept that deal?
Absolutely not. Okay. Absolutely not. That would be the silliest thing we could do.
What's the purpose of reciprocity then? Is reciprocity not one of your goals?
So I put that question to you. What do you think is the goal of these tariffs, if not reciprocity, as they've said over and over again?
Well, look, I think it might be reciprocity. I think it might be holding China accountable for their trade policies. But the problem is, and by the way, when Secretary Lutnick talks about this is our goals, those aren't bad goals. The problem is flawed policy. It doesn't work, and it's not going to work, because you don't apply tariffs across the board to everybody you do business with, regardless of their friends or foes, regardless if they're good trade deals or not. Remember, President Trump signed the trade deal with Canada and Mexico in his first term. It was a good trade deal then. All of a sudden, we're wiping that off, and we're doing things that just don't make any sense. And I would just say that if you're going to apply tariffs, you need to look for reciprocity. And we need to hold China accountable. But unfortunately, this White House is not. They're saying one thing and doing another. And by the way, this just doesn't happen in tariffs. This happens in things across the board, from food inspection right down the line. And quite honestly, that's why things aren't working. These policies are not thought through in a way that makes sense for America's families. And in the end, America's families are going to pay a tax, a tariff, on all these goods, and we're seeing it. The lady from Congress talked about bananas. It's going to be that way for products made out of steel and aluminum and everything else. And by the way, the margins are not good in many of these businesses, and it's gonna put a lot of people out of work, and it's gonna cause businesses to go into bankruptcy. That's what I believe the long-term impacts of this are going to be.
And Courtney, the senator provided a beautiful setup for the question I'm about to ask you. You wrote in Axios on Wednesday on how we're seeing a pandemic flashback. I'm going to quote you back to you. Factories are reporting increasingly longer delivery times of supplies. Material prices are rising at a faster rate. Automakers are warning of supply disruptions, shutting down assembly lines, with at least one car maker pausing production. Then also on Wednesday, CNBC had the headline on rising prices. Most companies are already raising prices or plan to because of tariffs. Data show more than 30% of manufacturers and roughly 45% of service firms pass through all of the higher costs to their consumers, according to the New York Fed's statistics. I mean, these are real. One is a foreseen impact in terms of disruptions, and the other one is consumers are already paying.
Right. So this is very uncomfortable for manufacturers who are reporting. And by the way, this is private sector data that regularly comes out, regularly surveys small, medium, large manufacturers. And what they're telling them is that, we haven't seen anything like this since the height of the pandemic. It's a very uncomfortable comparison. They don't know what's next. They don't know when they're going to be able to get their inputs. And when they do get their inputs, they know that they're paying more. And as you say, they're not going to take all that cost on themselves.
Oh, of course not. No,
they're going to split it up through the supply chain, and some of it is going to fall on the consumer. That is just fact. The extent to which prices get passed on to the consumer, that's the huge question for the Federal Reserve, other economic policymakers. But I think the question of whether prices are going up, that is settled.
This whole situation is, you know what this whole situation is, Courtney?
What?
Bananas.
As Mr. Capehart likes to say, facts are stubborn things.
Gwen Stefani's going to give you a call.
She is.
She's
She
like,
is. She wants some money.
Yeah.
You can call me.
Courtney Brown and John Tester, thank you so much for joining. Coming up, Harvard hits back. Inside, a federal judge's decision to temporarily halt Trump's foreign student ban at Harvard, and why the president keeps taking L's in his war against the nation's oldest college. You're watching The Weekend.
While May's jobs report shows surface stability, downward revisions and workforce exits raise alarms. Trump's tariff hikes on steel, aluminum, and bananas trigger inflation fears, supply chain disruptions, and looming factory shutdowns. Economists and businesses warn of long-term economic instability, bankruptcy risks, and consumer price hikes devastating American families. Beyond the economic strain, Trump escalates his war on Harvard, triggering another court battle over foreign student visa restrictions.
President Donald Trump is once again trying to turn Harvard into his presidential punching bag, but the courts are punching back. This week, after Trump issued yet another order to block the university from enrolling international students, Harvard rushed to court, as they've been doing. And in just 4 hours, a federal judge ruled in the school's favor and issued a temporary restraining order saying the president's directive would cause, quote, immediate and irreparable injury. But despite the loss, the administration shows no signs of easing up on Harvard. Education Secretary Linda McMahon admitted the university has taken steps to counter anti-Semitism on campus, but she gives the credit to Trump's policies.
I have seen progress at Columbia.
Have you seen progress
and
at
you know
Harvard?
why? I think we're seeing progress because we are putting these measures in place and we're saying we're putting teeth behind what we're looking at. I'm really happy to see what Harvard did. But I wonder if maybe they didn't get a little spur from our action.
Joining us now, Maya Jazdanoff, Coolidge Professor of History at Harvard University, and Ankush Kadore, former federal prosecutor and senior writer for Political Magazine. Professor, I want to start with you because you're the first person I think that we've had from Harvard actually here. So when you're on campus, as you're talking to professors, as you're talking to the administration there, how are you guys taking this, and why do you think you are the tip of the spear for this administration?
Well, I think we're the tip of the spear because we're historically the oldest university in the U.S., one of the richest, and one of the most prestigious, not just in the U.S., but in the world. So, from a culture war perspective, I think there's a lot of reasons why the president and his war against the elites wants to target Harvard. I think that we experience it on campus as an unprecedented singling out of an institution of higher education as one of the president's enemies. And we view it as you said, the tip of the spear in a war against all of higher education in this country, which is a very dangerous thing that I think all citizens should be worried about.
Ankush, the president thinks that Harvard's just going to cave to all the pressure. Listen to what he had to say on Thursday.
All we want to do is see their list. There's no problem with that. This is anybody outside of our country, international students. Because when we see some of the people that we've been watching, we say, where do these people come from? How is that possible? No, we want to have foreign students come. We're very honored by it, but we want to see their list. Harvard didn't want to give us the list. They're going to be giving us the list now. I think they're starting to behave, actually, if you want to know the truth.
And so, Ankush, I should have been a little more specific about what the president was talking about. This is on the issue of foreign visas for foreign students to come to Harvard. But it's one more front in the war that the president has declared on Harvard University. I mean, what levers does the Trump administration still have at its disposal to keep going at Harvard? And does Harvard have a legal leg to stand on going forward?
Yeah, I mean, he's running out of levers, it seems, right? I mean, he's trying to now, obviously, block the arrival of international students. He's canceling contracts. He set in motion all these efforts to sort of harm the university on its most central sort of features. And legally, they're doing a pretty good job so far. These cases are still in their early stages. The central claim that Harvard is alleging is it's a First Amendment violation, that the administration is retaliating against them. And I think for the most part, they should prevail on those types of claims. Whether they will prevail, of course, is not entirely predictable. I think, in particular, the areas where there are sort of immigration implications, including like this proposed visa restriction. Courts tend to give the president more deference around immigration. We saw this during the first term at the Muslim ban, even though there were lots of questions about why that even came into existence. So, it's hard to predict how this will all shake out, but they're winning so far, but it's early stages still.
Professor, one of the things that has happened is Harvard is standing up while other schools are, some folks call it capitulating, some others say trying to navigate a complicated process. Have you been surprised by other universities like Columbia that have tried to figure out a different way to do this and maybe aren't standing as tough as Harvard is?
I'm certainly disappointed. I recognize, though, the very real financial impacts that these moves have. They have the potential to shut down research enterprises in life-saving areas of medical research, in all kinds of things that are really at the core of what universities are about. And so if you're faced with the choice of halting your activities, possibly laying off thousands of people, basically becoming something that is unrecognizable from what you're set up to do, and making some changes to your policies, I certainly understand why people are making those choices. But I am very disappointed. I mean, the analogy that comes to mind to me is that the government is holding a gun to institutions' heads, and they're saying, all right, you can, I'm going to shoot you, but if you don't want me to shoot you, then please hang yourself. And this is an absurd situation that universities have been put into. I'm glad that Harvard is standing up for the principles at stake and, frankly, for fundamental constitutional rights.
And for the other colleges, too, right? Because like you said, Harvard's the tip of the spear. If the administration, if any administration is able to take on the oldest, the most prestigious, the richest school, then what chance do the others have?
Absolutely. If Harvard didn't do it, nobody was going to do it. And it's very uncertain to me, as Ankush just pointed out. We don't know how this is going to play out. Harvard, on the other side of this, may look really different from what it was at the beginning of this. But, you know, if Harvard didn't do it, then we would be looking at, I think, a really big wipeout of universities and other institutions of civil society in what is clearly an authoritarian power grab by this administration.
You know, Ankush, for weeks now, months now, we have been talking about what the professor is talking about, the administration's power grab in various aspects and going after institutions of higher learning, particularly Harvard, is part of the authoritarian playbook. I guess where I'm going is he can do all these things, hammer away at Harvard, institute yet another Muslim ban, and force people to take him to court. But how certain, how concerned are you that when these cases all get to the Supreme Court, that the administration will probably win most of them?
You know, I don't know how much of it they'll win. They'll probably win some, unclear how much. It is it's been a prominent trend of this administration, and it's been a problematic one. I would say, though, that I think it's important to distinguish, when we're talking about Trump's sort of revenge campaign or the use of the office for retaliatory purposes, there are all sorts of things that have come under that umbrella, including his attacks on law firms, including his reprisals against certain individuals like Chris Krebs. I think the universities are categorically distinct for a very important reason, which the professor touched on, which is that the effects of the administration's actions toward them don't just affect the university in the way that it would be local. The effects are localized on a law firm. They affect the whole country and the whole world because of how much research and other activities they do that most of us don't have to worry about or even think about, but they are the primary engines of innovation in a lot of areas in this country. And so we actually all have a stake in this. I went to Columbia, and Columbia's obviously come under this same sort of set of pressures, but it is categorically distinct. I think the stakes are higher.
Professor Maya Jasanoff and Ankush Khardori, thank you both very much for coming to The Weekend. And when we come back, first for this show, we've got 3 Democratic state attorneys general joining us to lay out their priorities for taking on the Trump administration.
Trump targets Harvard again, attempting to block foreign student visas. In just 4 hours, a federal judge halts his order, citing constitutional violations. Harvard stands firm, resisting authoritarian attacks on academia. Legal experts warn these power grabs jeopardize America's entire higher education system and international scientific leadership. Trump's chaos hits new heights. A $275 million fallout with Elon Musk, a collapsing $2.4 trillion spending bill, ICE raids sparking legal firestorms, economic warning signs flashing red, and an all-out war on Harvard. As America spirals under MAGA's authoritarian experiment, cracks in the system threaten to unleash a full-scale democratic crisis. This week's The Weekend episode exposed just how dangerously unstable the United States has become under Trump's second-term agenda. At the center of the chaos is the explosive political divorce between Donald Trump and Elon Musk, a partnership that once revolved around massive campaign cash and mutual benefit, but has now devolved into open warfare with serious consequences for democracy, the economy, and the rule of law. The Trump-Musk feud is not merely personal drama. It's a window into the rot within the MAGA coalition itself. Musk's admission that he essentially bought the election for Trump by spending $275 million has ripped the mask off America's broken campaign finance system. Trump, in response, has threatened to cancel government contracts with Musk's companies, while Musk is now openly vowing to bankroll primary challengers against Trump's loyal GOP allies. What was once a transactional relationship built on deregulation and access to federal dollars has shattered, exposing the dangerous fusion of tech oligarchy and authoritarian politics. Meanwhile, Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill, a $2.4 trillion spending plan, is imploding under bipartisan opposition. Even Republican senators are breaking ranks, concerned over massive cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, and long-term care services that would leave millions of Americans vulnerable. House Republicans fear Musk's threats to fund challengers if they vote for the bill. Democrats have seized the moment, amplifying GOP infighting while highlighting the human cost of slashing healthcare and ballooning national debt for tax giveaways to the ultra-rich. But while legislative battles rage, Trump's abuses of executive power are escalating into dangerous new territory. The administration's illegal deportation and politically motivated prosecution of immigrant Kilmar Abrigo Garcia has drawn fierce condemnation from legal experts. After wrongfully deporting him to El Salvador, Trump's DOJ brought him back not to correct the error, but to indict him on smuggling charges, an outrageous manipulation of due process that undermines constitutional protections for undocumented immigrants nationwide. Legal analysts warn this retroactive prosecution could set a terrifying precedent. Amid these legal and political firestorms, America's economic stability shows serious cracks. Although the May jobs report initially seemed positive, deeper revisions revealed significant downward adjustments. Over 600,000 Americans exited the workforce entirely, a deeply troubling sign of growing instability. Trump's steep new tariffs, doubling duties on steel, aluminum, and even bananas, are compounding supply chain disruptions, driving up consumer prices, and threatening mass layoffs in key industries. Economists now warn that this reckless trade war may push vulnerable businesses into bankruptcy and gut working-class families' purchasing power. If that weren't enough, Trump has also reignited his war against higher education, once again targeting Harvard University. In an authoritarian move, Trump issued an executive order to block foreign students from enrolling. But within hours, a federal judge halted the policy, citing clear constitutional violations. Harvard has stood its ground, resisting Trump's escalating assault on academic freedom and due process. Legal experts caution that if Trump succeeds in gutting institutions like Harvard, the entire foundation of American research, innovation, and global leadership could collapse. Throughout this episode, The Weekend captured the totality of Trump's flood the zone strategy, overwhelming the media and public attention with constant overlapping crises to evade accountability. As Steve Bannon once bragged, hit them with 3 things every day and they'll never recover. But with each new scandal, cracks within the MAGA edifice widen, and bipartisan alarm grows over Trump's increasingly authoritarian governance. The question remains, how long can America's democratic guardrails hold under this multi-front assault? As Trump's chaos machine accelerates, America faces a dangerous convergence of political, economic, and legal crises. With institutions under siege and MAGA loyalists emboldened, the nation teeters on the brink. Whether democracy can